Om Kayena vacha manasyendrayirva bhutyatmanava prakriti swabhava karomi adyat sakalam paresma Narayanayeti samarpayami Narayanayeti samarpayami.
Dear Seeker of Truth, welcome. In this series of videos, we are going to talk about Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, of divine love, of God realization. So we are going to talk about the Narada Bhakti Sutras, a beautiful work attributed to sage Narada that talks about in full length of the path of devotion. May you all find inspiration in this work. May you all find meaning and purpose in your spiritual quest through these words. This kind of work, these words, these sutras, they bring light and they open the door to the life of the real quest for liberation. May you also find divine love in your heart. Moving on, Narada Bhakti Sutras, Chapter 6, Supremacy of Devotion. Sutra 25. Its supreme devotion is again higher than action, knowledge, and yoga. So it is saying, Narada says that devotion is superior to all others because devotion is the core, the life of all spiritual disciplines. Without it, no discipline, no spiritual discipline will bear fruit. And the fruit of all spiritual disciplines is that supreme devotion. Supreme devotion is of the nature of self-realization. It is self-realization. So all other spiritual paths, they are, in a way, they are tools to purify oneself, to purify devotion, to grow in devotion. So if devotion is not taken into account in these other paths, it's because there's not enough purity for that. And those spiritual disciplines will help to purify oneself so that devotion can grow. So let's go to some points. So Narada says that karma, jnana, and yoga are methods to achieve the result, where bhakti is the result itself. So they are methods to achieve that supreme devotion. Whereas devotion, the path of devotion, bhakti, is the end in itself. It starts with devotion, ends with devotion. The others, well, the others in a sense, they just start when there is devotion. They just really start when there is devotion. But they have methods that the seeker can start with in the absence of devotion, but eventually it will have to lead to devotion. So a yogi is one who enters into a living communion with God and perfectly realizes his immanence and activity everywhere in the world. And the vehicle for that is devotion. Without devotion, this yogi cannot achieve this God communion. So devotion is the vehicle for the yogi. Unless one is blessed with the love of the Lord, unless one's heart is purified by devotion, it is impossible to perform unselfish service. So without this devotion, without being purified by devotion, the karma yogi cannot do unselfish actions. So there is no real karma yogi without the purification of devotion. Bhakti or devotion is an end in itself. In jnana and yoga, there is a risk of downfall. In the path of devotion, there is no risk because the devotee receives full support and help from God. And the other ones, if God is there present, if you're holding on to devotion, surely there will be no risk of downfall. But in the absence of devotion and the absence of the presence of God, there is the risk of downfall. And even the scriptures of Vedanta, they always start with a heartfelt prayer to the Lord. A karma yogi regards work as worship, as worshiping God. He is offering that work to God. It's duty for duty's sake. Selfless service through renunciation of the fruits of one's act is a means for attaining God. There is no bondage in selfless service. But there is no selfless service unless devotion for God is there present, unless one has been purified by devotion. So if this purification by devotion has not occurred, in some sense, this work that the karma yogi is performing is being used for his own selfish means, either by recognition or whatever still feeds his world. And it is devotion the vehicle to that greater service. It is devotion that purifies one's heart and renders that a selfless service, a worship to God. A karma yogi should cultivate the virtues: tolerance, adaptability, sympathy, mercy, equal vision, balance of mind, cosmic love, patience, humility, generosity, nobility, self-restraint, control of anger, non-violence, truthfulness, moderation in eating, drinking and sleeping, simple living and endurance. Then alone there will be perfect success in the practice of karma yoga. Karma yoga is the exercise of the will. Jnana yoga, the exercise of intellect and reason. Bhakti yoga is the exercise of emotion. Even so, these points are giving an idea, but because they are breaking down into sections, but it's all a whole. So all these other disciplines, they are a means to bhakti. But bhakti has to be taken into account. It has to be there present. And this is the difficulty when there's not enough purity for that. But without the appearance of devotion, no path brings fruit, because devotion is the ultimate fruit. Is the lower fruits, the sweet lower fruits, and the highest of the fruits. It is devotion. So will consecrates all activities through complete surrender to God. So without complete surrender to God, there is no karma yoga. The intellect realizes the glory and majesty of the Lord. So there's this idea of that silent stillness, that undifferentiated totality, but that is God alone. That is God alone. The emotion experiences the bliss of divine ecstasy. And in every path, bliss is talked about. So Arjuna puts a question to the Lord. Those devotees who ever harmonized, worship thee, and those also who worship the indestructible, the unmanifested, of these who is the most learned in yoga, asks Arjuna. The Lord replies, they who, with mind fixed on me, ever harmonized, worship me, with faith supreme endowed, they, in my mind, are the best in yoga. Because they have all the fruits and they have been drinking from the nectar of devotion. They have been in constant communion. Again says in the Gita, the yogi is greater than even the wise, the yogi is greater than the man of action, therefore become thou a yogi, O Arjuna. And in this case, there is a distinction of the man of action, the karma yoga, and the wise, the jnana yoga, so the yoga of bhakti. So here is a clear distinction. But again, I must stress this point, because these points, they are, and these sutras are of bhakti yoga, but we need to understand and take it further, because bhakti yoga is not a separate path, it is the path. All paths are a path to bhakti. That devotion is the center, the life of all spiritual disciplines. So all other means, they are nothing without bhakti. And all that other means are instruments of bhakti. So this is why we talked about, into the path of bhakti, we talked about meditation, for example. And it is a very important practice in the path of bhakti. And belongs to all other disciplines as well. Bhakti is the life of them all. So it's not something that excludes others. It is the life of them all. Among all yogis, in the Gita again, he who, full of faith with the inner self, abiding in me, adores me, he is considered by me to be the most completely harmonized in all aspects, in all sense. But by single-minded devotion can I thus be perceived, O Arjuna, and known and seen in essence and entered, O Parantapa. So only by single-minded devotion I can be known and enter to. This is what Krishna is saying. So all other means that are of God realization or self-realization, they are a means to devotion, to single-minded devotion. Bhakti path, or the spirit of bhakti in all spiritual disciplines, is easy for the vast majority of seekers. God takes a form for helping the devotees. So all these godly forms, all these forms that represent God, they are there. God assumed those forms to help the devotee to establish a relation, to develop devotion. None of these images are absolute in form. They are absolute in essence. Bhakti path is the easiest, safest, surest, and quickest way for attaining the highest bliss or God realization. That is the reason why Narada Rishi says, Bhakti is greater than karma, Gyan, and Yoga. Because this Bhakti path has the spirit of devotion, of Bhakti. But again, there are certain disciplines like meditation, and like the sage mentioned in the previous sutra, loving meditation, that meditation full of reverence and surrender and devotion, that helps to purify devotion, because it's very easy to maintain oneself trapped or halted in this lower bhakti. So this constant quest for purification is very, very important. And discipline and hard work must be present. Because if it's taken just as, well, those who mount dizzy heights by austere practices, fancying themselves liberated but being really unenlightened, because lacking in devotion to thee, O Lotus Eye One, fall into a chasm of not having loved thy feet. Never so, however, thy own, O Madhava, stray away from the path, being tied to thee by bonds of affection, and guarded by thee, they walk fearlessly in the spiritual path. So what does this mean? This is long, but it's very important. And in a way, we have the present reality of spirituality, where many spiritual paths that talk about this is spirituality, and spirituality as something that goes against the idea, the existence of God. So this is very common. So I'm spiritual, I'm crossing the path because, for example, in Jnana Yoga, there is no duality. If there's God, there's duality. All these ideas, they are because of a lot of impurities, a lot of selfishness present, and a lot of difficulty in conceiving the existence of God and surrendering to God. And this is what it said. And eventually they rise high in vibration and all those things because of the practices, but they are godless. They don't have God's blessing. And eventually they fall. And it's a pity in a sense, because the whole purpose of spiritual practice, the fruits of that rising higher, is rising higher in God's consciousness, in divinity. So if you exclude God from the equation, you have nothing, and you wasted so much time without being able to love God. And in the case of the devotee, it doesn't matter in which path. If he is a devotee and holding on to God, God takes care. God guides. So, Sutra 26. Because of its being of the nature of the result or fruit of all of this. So, second sutra says that it is higher, according to the first one, because of its being of the nature of the result or fruit of all of this. So like I've explained, it is superior because it is the result of all of them. It is the evolving of all of them. It is the heart and core of all. So let's go to the points. Devotion is not a means to an end. It is both a means and an end. It is the end or culmination of all sadhanas or disciplines, like I mentioned previously. It is the end of all spiritual practices, and it is the life of all spiritual practices, as they are going, are being undertaken before that final realization, before the fruit that is devotion itself, supreme devotion. The hidden God is made manifest through devotion. Then man realizes his own divine nature. And it is hidden. It is hidden. The God is hidden. Like some people say, if there is a God, why don't I see it? It is hidden from your eyes because devotion is not there. And if devotion is not there, a lot of impurities are there. And that means God cannot be seen. Only by His blessing, by His darshan. But that's different. Various disciplines such as practice of yoga, religious rites, self-control, vows of various kinds, service to one's teacher or guru, cultivation of divine virtues are described in the sacred scriptures, but devotion to the Lord is the end of them all. So all of those, the end of them, are devotion to the Lord, to God. And without having this vision of devotion being the life of the spiritual process, the end in itself, your practices, if you don't know this, if this cannot fit your world, your practice will give you little fruits because there's no room for it. So Gyan is the fruit of the practice of the fourfold practice. Viveka, discrimination, Vairagya, dispassion, the sixfold virtues, Sama, control of the mind, Dhamma, control of the organs, Uparati, renunciation of all works, Titiksha, forbearance, Shraddha, faith, Samadhana, concentration, Mumukshutava, strong yearning for liberation. Purity of heart and the effacement of ego is the result of the practice of Karma Yoga. Kaivalya, enlightenment, is the fruit of the practice of Raja Yoga. But Bhakti is itself of the nature of the result of all these. We begin with Bhakti and end with Bhakti. Bhakti, or love, has not come as a result of anything. It hasn't come to devotee as a new thing. It is always there. So what it's saying is that the other paths eventually will bring Bhakti. But in Bhakti, in the Bhakti path, it starts with Bhakti. And it will end in Bhakti. And all others end in Bhakti. Gyan, Karma, and Yoga are the paths which give the results in the form of Bhakti, or supreme devotion to the Lord. And again, I will underline that the difficulty in having fruits of these other paths is this not being aware that devotion is the end result and the means for it also, and not being aware of it means also that it doesn't fit that world yet. Because when you become aware, when it fits, even if it is just as a concept, then you'll strive towards it and it will begin. And when it begins, it will surely end. Parabhakti is the goal itself. It is not the result of sadhana, an effort. If it is an effect, it cannot be eternal. So Parabhakti is another term for self-realization or God's realization, because it is the supreme devotion, the most pure devotion. That is we cannot say that it is an effort or a result. It is ever there. Devotion is higher than the others because it is its own reward and it is the life of the others. Yes. Those who follow other paths cherish some ulterior motives in view. Also, there's no bhakti as long as there is ulterior motives, so they fail to attain God. So a lot of motivations fit other paths, either for power, self-importance, glory, whatever, or self-realization. And depending on the seeker, these paths are undertaken with these motives in view. And this is an obstacle to the end of them all. Because as long as there's ulterior motives, there is no real devotion, and it is a hindrance to all spiritual paths. And in bhakti, there is no real bhakti as long as there are other motives. Like I'm loving God because I want something from Him. This is a part of the bhakti path, because impurities are there as that love is being cultivated. But the more love you cultivate, the more these impurities are purified, until no motive, no desire is there but to love God for loving God alone. Okay.
Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva, tvameva bandhushka sakha tvameva, tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva, tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. Tvameva sarvam mama deva deva.